The emotional complexity of this Big Bang Theory prequel will stun haters and fans alike. Well, clearly there's something wrong with this title because I thought the episode sucked. Now, I never thought I would have to review the pilot for Young Sheldon. I always thought I would just watch the entire full season 1 and then review the show. But you know what? Screw it. If I'm given the chance to prove that I was right on my video predicting the quality of the show, I'll gladly take it. So the first issue I noticed with this pilot was the comedy. After I finished watching the episode, I was very curious to see who wrote it, only to find out it was written by some of the writers of The Big Bang Theory, which made complete sense. The humor has this very basic sitcom structure that begins with a lead-in followed by a punchline. Except this type of formula, at least the way these writers structured it, usually only really works when you add a laugh track after it, and while they wouldn't necessarily pause the dialogue, at least not for too long, every time there was a joke it was depressingly obvious to me that it was in desperate need for a laugh track because of how simple, layered, obvious, and direct they were. I honestly didn't laugh at any joke, and the few ones that were kind of funny were previously featured in the promos. Sure, it's technically not the episode's fault, but that doesn't really change my experience. The acting performances of some of the characters were very poor, including Sheldon. I genuinely don't understand why people are praising this actor. He comes across as an emotionless dummy to me, and judging by his facial expressions, he just looks so bored. But the worst out of all of them was Sheldon's older brother, in which there's a certain scene where he was supposed to act scared that his mom was going to find his private magazines, and another where he was upset after he fought against a colleague during a football game, and in both those scenes, you can tell just how untrained he is as an actor. The characters themselves weren't completely unlikable. I thought Sheldon's twin sister was kind of alright. I don't know, there's something about her bitter and snide behavior that I find to be kind of relatable. Mary Cooper behaved more realistically compared to The Big Bang Theory, which is pretty much a cartoon character. And finally, I kind of like George and how he's clearly struggling to contain a lot of stress while also trying to help and guide his kids when they need it. Besides that, there really isn't much positive things to say. I mean, I guess the camera work was fine for a single camera sitcom, but there were a few scenes that were meant to comically emphasize Sheldon's panic, but the way they were shot was very sloppy, coupled with generic suspenseful music. Something else that kinda bothered me was how the episode didn't seem to have a defined centric story. There were certain scenes that while they did kind of have a connection with each other, in terms of narrative they didn't really rely on each other, and they seemed to be driven each by their own self-contained theme. Like, what was the point of the church scene? What was the point of showing us Sheldon's brother side of the story in the grand scheme of things? How does the last scene serve as a conclusion to any of the characters' arc besides this one scene where Sheldon refused to touch his father's hand? Very little moments actually tie in with each other. Like, who do you think you are, freaking Lucky Star? Now, breaking story conventions isn't necessarily a bad thing depending on what you hope to achieve and how successful you are at achieving that. Based on my interpretation, it seems like the reason the story was structured like this is because they wanted to introduce us to the characters, with each scene establishing a key aspect of the character, which in my opinion, I think it was unnecessary. I could easily tell how the characters are like solely based on how they simply interact with each other, and even though I don't mind shows dedicating their first episodes to establishing everything we need to know about the show, I think it would have been better if the episode had an actual story with scenes that actually tie in with each other while cleverly dropping a few moments of character establishment. Also, another purpose those scenes had was to highlight how much of a genius, socially awkward, and a nuisance Sheldon was, which kind of felt overly shoved in. Like, no joking, there's a scene that was literally just meant to show off how Sheldon is capable of learning how the piano works without practice. Although despite all of this, I do think that if you're capable of ignoring all of the bullcrap I mentioned, you might get touched emotionally by several moments in the episode. At least, that's what I like to think. So yeah, this was a mediocre pilot of what I fear it will become a bland family-themed sitcom. Like, come on, there's a dinner scene where the kids started having a food fight while their mother tried to stop them. Anyway, I'm done with this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye for now.